Welcome. In this video, we will discuss about how 24 million may drop out of school because of the present pandemic condition. So now we know that it has been now around 6 months across the globe where the schools have been shut down because of the present coronavirus pandemic situation. Now presently a UN report has says that the impact of it is pretty huge, which means that around 24 million students may actually drop out even when the pandemic situation were able to control. So now let's try to see what exactly they have been talking about. So the first thing that they say that almost 24 million people are at risk of not returning to school in 2021. So now the thing to remember over here is not that only at present people returning in 2021 will also be less. So there will be less student in 2021 because of the present pandemic situation. Consider a scenario where a lot of people have been into the school, and because of the present economic situation also the parents will not be able to for an example provide the fees. So because of it there is a huge probability that the students who have now not been able to go to school might never come back to school, and that number is a staggering at 24 million. So that is one of the thing that this report talks about. Now it's again talk about that 1.6 billion learners across the world have been affected by the disruption of the education system. So across the globe, many countries have started the measures of shutting down their school because of the contagiousness of this virus, and which eventually means that 1.6 billion learners have been put out of education, not the normal way they have been going. So the schools and colleges have been shut down, which means 1.6 billion learners across the globe have faced some kind of disruption in the education. Now the other thing which this report is specifically emphasized on is how the educational gap is also likely to increase by one third. So now for today we have educational gap in gender as well as within status and socio-economic condition. So now this particular gap which was already existing is demanded or is predicted that it will increase further by one third, which is again a huge number. So we have a SDG goal about education. Here what it seems that even though we were on the track of bridging the gap, this particular pandemic had the overrecurring impact that the gap will eventually increase by one third. So it's going to derail our commitments or derail our policies which were inclined to fulfill the idea of equality in education. So this is another finding which has been reported by the government, the UN, sorry. And next what it does talk about is that it is also going to exaggerate the existing disparity. As mentioned earlier, the socio-economic status, the people who are at the bottom of the socio-economic ladder, they will be most affected by it because the education has now shifted towards the e-learning platform or the digital education, and those are the people who will be worst affected because of the lack of connectivity in terms of your internet, lack of equipment, for an example your laptops or a smartphone. So this particular disparity which earlier was about to bridge because of the school and the affirmative actions taken by various organizations and government across the world, again is this particular pandemic has the impact that this disparities will further increase. So this is one of the things which is talk about, and it also specifically says that the countries of low income countries like India is into middle group, but the low income countries will be the worst affected one. Also, this report says that during the second quarter of 2020, which we are in presently, more than 85% of children at the primary level have been effectively out of school in poor countries. So this is says that the present quarter which we are in, the kind of conditions they have been going on, it says that 80 5% children across the globe have been out of school, because majorly because how the schools themselves has been shut down because of the contagious nature of this virus. So these are very important finding of this report. Now from UPSC perspective, try to consider these points and note them down when you are writing your even education essay. So this is again a problem, the problem of inequality, and how the bottom strata of our society is the worst effect in the case of COVID-19. So you have to remember how to prepare for COVID-19, because throughout, like now for 4 5 months, every time you open a newspaper or an article, there is some or the other article about COVID-19. So from examination point of view, you have to start seeing into things like how COVID-19 has impacted the education sector, health sector, human development, your personal well-being, then your women empowerment scenario, other movements, conditions of other vulnerable section of society, as well as overall economy. So these are the points that you have to pick up whenever you are trying to read any article related to COVID-19. So now coming back to the topic, let's also try to see some other findings which this particular report talks about. Now, a very important concern it raises is that it is going to be disproportionately unfavorable to the girls and the women. So, girls and the young child are likely to be disproportionately affected, as schools closure make them more vulnerable to child marriage, early pregnancy and gender based violence. So if you have been following news, you know that the cases of domestic violence against women and child have skyrocketed since the lockdown across countries. So it is not only the case of India, but across nations the cases of domestic violence has increased because of the various lockdowns and restriction of movement, and this has created. Now from the education point of view, it could also have more trouble for the girl child, because they could be forced into the early child marriage or early pregnancy. So these are big concern which the countries across the world, their government has to think about. Now it also says that even for those who do not drop out of school, learning losses could be severe. So if you have seen, there was a very important article in the Hindu which talked about how the people, the Divyangs, the people with the certain disability, have been having a lot of trouble in terms of learning through e-learning mediums. So these are few points that even though we the people who are still able to get the guidelines or still attend the school, the learning outcome would be very less, and the impact it has on the kind of learning curve the child should has is going to be very severe. So this is again one of the major concern this UN report raises. Now it also says that in early 2020 it was estimated that low and medium incomes faced almost $150 billion gap between their education budget and the money available to reach SDGs. So as mentioned earlier, the sustainable development goal which talk about the education, the kind of gap which existed before this pandemic hit was around $150 billion, and now because of the COVID situation the things has become more drastic, and hence the more drastic measure and more collaborative measures has to be taken by the government across the world, so that the education, which is a very fundamental right of all the children, as well as the foundational basis on which the eventual economy works on, it's very important that the certain heed is paid towards it. So I hope you have understood this video. If you have any doubt, please comment. Thank you.